My name's Sally Shaw. I'm Head of Programme at Modern Art Oxford. Thank you for coming. So I'm just going to very quickly introduce you to both Brian and Eva. Born in London 1948, English sculptor, poet, novelist, filmmaker and performance artist. Educated at the North East London Polytechnic and Royal College of Art, Professor of Fine Art at the Ruskin School of Drawing and Fine Art here in Oxford, and a Fellow of Linacre College. You've been exhibiting internationally since 1970. Your most notable works and performances include Quill 2 at Matt's Gallery in 2011, a commissioned memorial to the site of execution at the Tower of London in 2007, Vanished, a video séance made with screenwriter Tony Grisoni in 1999. You co-founded the international performance collective The Wolves in Winter, who were here a couple of months ago causing havoc in our Piper Gallery. I had to sweep up, thank you Brian. Eva Kotátková, born in 1982 in Prague in the Czech Republic. From 2002 to 2008 you studied at the Academy of Fine Arts and the Academy of Applied Arts in Prague, at the San Francisco Art Institute and the Academy der Bildende Kunst in Vienna. Since 2009 you've been completing your PhD at the Academy of Applied Arts in Prague. In 2007 you won the J. Chalapecki Award for Young Artists. You were included in the 18th Biennial of Sydney in 2012, the Venice Biennial in 2013, and now you're here, Modern Art Oxford, first UK solo show. Your practice ranges from works on paper to social interventions, performances and sculptures. In these different media you reflect on social rules, expectations and propaganda strategies which impose restrictive structures on the individual. So my first little question to get the ball rolling is about something, Eva, that you've mentioned a couple of times when we've been talking about your work and your practice. And I've been trying to kind of pin you down to a little bit of a moment when I can sort of understand that a lot of your thought processes come from. And you've mentioned a couple of times that when you were a child in Prague in 1989, of course, famous moment, that there was a moment when all the textbooks changed, and there seems to be this kind of galvanizing moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Even so, it's quite a tricky question for the start.
Tricky, I'm sorry.
But I'm sorry, I speak even more quiet. So, but I will do my best. And just before we start, I just want to thank very much, Brian. It's really a big privilege to be here with you today, and thank you for your time. So I just hope I will not be more embarrassed than necessary. But to your question, yeah, I mean, because I refer, and also in the past I did some projects which were dealing very much with school environments, with methods how an individual is educated and very often also manipulated within or inside of certain social structures. So very often I was going back to my own, not in some biographical way, I hope, no, sure. But definitely not, but going back to my school years. And as you mentioned, I started to go to school in 1989, which was this revolutionary, very emotional year, which of course in that time and now I will speak very naively, just trying to remember what was my perception as a small child, because I was 7 years old. So it was rather, of course, big excitement, which I couldn't understand at all. I just understand now that it had much more layers that I could perceive in that moment. And you mentioned that one of the strongest memories was that apart from, of course, the excitements of my parents and all the emotional things happening around, there was this moment when they brought the educational books to school, and then the content in mainly the history books and books of literature was very much changed. Suddenly the books grown, the content was much richer, and I suddenly realized that what we started to learn at the beginning of the year was actually very reduced, very manipulated version of how the reality actually functioned behind the walls. But yeah, I'm not sure how to.
Well, I was wondering about the textbook format, but also the idea of drawings and imagery within your work as a starting point, because your first works were very much two-dimensional collage drawing-based works, but actually when you start to look at the installation here, I see sort of three-dimensional drawings to start with, and also they're very inviting, they're very accessible in some means, as if you were inviting people into an idea very openly. So for me, there's a nice sort of connection from this early inspiration into what we have in the gallery here. So I wonder if you can talk a little bit more about those early works and drawing and see where we get to.
Well, so when we still talk about books, so then I would say that they were not only inspirational for me to read about literature and other books, but I also started to use them maybe like 3 years ago in a rather brutal way, not too respectful, in the sense that I would be actually cutting or tearing apart actual images or fragments of books and then reassembling them or creating different collages and compositions or temporary constellations of them, somehow changing or suggesting different view on the content or even like adding some other elements to it. And you are definitely right that because drawing is one of my main tools.
You're always drawing. Whenever I see you,
almost every day. Yeah, that's my
and
constant.
Yeah.
I guess somehow my thinking, which maybe is not that developed in the way that I would be able to keep or store ideas in the head. I always feel the urge to put everything on paper. So that's maybe why I always need to write down things and sketch things down. And
Brian, is this how does this identify with you?
I'm thinking. I was just thinking, last year I was in Romania, and it was a very similar experience to when I was in the Czech Republic the first time. One thing I couldn't understand was why I was instantly recognized as a foreigner everywhere I went, especially outside the main cities. So I asked somebody, and they said, it's because of your facial expression, because you have facial expression, and you're smiling a lot. And I didn't understand, and they just said, well, we don't. Our kids are now learning to have facial expression and to be happy, because we've been impressed for so long that people just, and so, but through all those years, the one thing that wasn't was the visual imagination, especially from the Czech Republic, that came out in films and came out in animation in particular. And it was always vibrant, and it was always communicative, and it was always generally about the body, and about the body meeting an obstacle, generally a building or an oppressive force. But the body was always an intense part of how people would explain where they were and explain their idea of the human condition. And what I like so much about this is that it's kind of opened out. So this is not that history. This is something completely other than that. But it's still got something of the same need to reach out and say it to us. And if you have any doubts, that row of collages hanging there is a brilliant index to what's going on in there. So you can't get this wrong, I don't think, if you just see what's going on and see what people are doing. The difference is that their restrictions and the apparatus of containment and the frames that extend and control their anatomy, they control. They're still inside this locked island, but they control it. And these people performing, watching them very closely, they're doing it in calm. But interestingly, they're doing it without expression. And I don't know if you told them to do this, or it's just something you do as a performer if you don't want to show your personality. But it's very similar to the first condition.
Yeah, actually, to be honest, I wasn't able to be too imperative or to give too many instructions to them, even though we rehearsed for quite a lot. But in the same time, I told them basically to focus on the activities they are doing as much as possible, try to become part of the objects so that they would be something in between part objects, part bodies, trying to create a really kind of life sculpture situation in some moments. And then there are another situations when, so there are these like very silent, rather static parts, and then suddenly from time to time the performers, and you could probably see it much more yesterday because there was a bigger group of 5 performers. Now it's just two of them, but you could see that at certain moment, without them talking to each other, without verbal communication, they suddenly start to make some sound, which almost sounds like a kind of orchestra, not really organized one, but they start to produce sounds and start to be more active on the stage, more
respond to each other.
Exactly. And then there is another moment which which was a little bit planned, but then also it always depended on the intuition or timing of each of the performers, that there was always one person escaping the limited playground or floor plan of the map on the floor, and somehow crossing the border and, for example, running towards the wall and standing in the corner, just like as if he would be punished or hiding somewhere, and then again staying there for 10 minutes or something and coming back and joining the others. So there is this kind of very changing rhythm of the whole installation, and I guess I was trying to give some directions, but then because of the performers' abilities and very good intuition, I didn't have to be too directive.
Eva frequently works on many exhibitions at once, and that they're often in lots of different types of geographies around the world, and how you cope with bringing your narrative along in that way in various different chapters, and how these different works correspond.
Well, I would say that you can probably see that there are several motives which repeat each other. So hopefully not in the sense that it would really become repetitive and boring, that I would be just traveling with my repertoire of things and showing them in different coordinates, but that I would say that there is a chain of motives or images or a certain vocabulary which you can already distinguish, or even thought somehow sometimes I fail in achieving the hopefully not in this case, but achieving the final installation or adjustment to the concrete space. But I would say there is really a kind of database of things or ideas which I somehow carry with me, and then I maybe would disagree that I am really able to work on more things in the same time, because you probably you know that I'm not then responding emails when I'm focusing on one exhibition. So when I'm installing, I'm basically just ignoring all the outside. You saw me here, so I'm basically just focusing on what I'm doing, and then only after that moving to another thing.
And the other thing that I've been sort of interested in watching is this idea of collaboration, which I think is something that's also very important to you, Brian, and how your own language becomes a translation when you're working with other people, and what sort of systems you make to enable that, and how you're able to just completely let go. Sometimes it's kind of like, off you go, okay, you interpret my work back to me. How does that work for both of you?
I came to that fairly recently, because I've always made things as a lone artist. So making things with groups of artists or other performers, it's you let something go and they give you something back. I'm always really interested in how much energy the actual audience put into work, especially into a performative work. I mean, I think curiosity can be a tangible element in the room and can actually affect people performing. But I think curiosity is an interesting thing to apply to this as well. I'm sort of going to go off your question, because I've got another one. Yeah. I think I know the answer, but I'm really interested that you made a decision to put 6 elements from the real world in there. So if we take all the made things, all the things that have been made in the studio, the steel things, the structured things, including this long table, then there's the carpet, the door, the walking stick, the stone, the plates, and the books. Why did you bring those as well? How did you see their function?
Yeah, that's a very good question, but I'm afraid I'm not. I guess it was really very intuitive decision, also a little bit in line with previous project I did, which was called Theatre of Speaking Objects, and in that case I was basically giving voices to everyday objects which would then speak with voices of their owners somehow. But I guess something like that, some object which some personal touch, personal memory with some scratches on it and with some visible signs of the object being used by someone before, were quite needed to, I guess the platform itself, the floor will get also scratched, so you will see it after some time, but I would say it would be just like too designed somehow too distant if I wouldn't include those elements, and then they might be perhaps too symbolic in the way, and I don't like that, to be honest. But in the same time, the door, for example, from time to time is serving really nicely. For example, when one of the performers wants to start some more loud situation and activate the others, he's knocking in a rather wild way on the door or trying to open the door handle, and then this moment, even though it's very maybe illustrative, somehow initiates the whole or starts the whole chaos on the
But that works brilliantly to the collages as well, because we need recognizable things, because I think they're performative as well. They are like the joining point between the made objects and the performers. So they're a kind of working together, sharing it, and making it more open, I think, to the audience.
It's like a sort of a soft route in.
Yeah.
As familiarity. There's also something about, you were just talking about the markings on the floor and how happy you are for it to become generally more and more and more scuffed. And for me as an exhibition
I'm hoping for it.
organizer, this is something else to think about. How do you care for something which is meant to get worn out, rubbed,
it's a blackboard, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it should be rubbed out and redrawn.
Yeah.
And then you see the other blackboard through there. If you have any doubts about that, it's echoed through into the next room.
But there's something about this kind of tone, which is this lovely kind of soft, handmade, familiar. We were talking a lot about this when we were producing the information sheet. It's very sort of, somebody just rolled up in the carpet. Soft. So this kind of softness to the work and the familiarity and handmade is another material, isn't it? It's another type of language that you're deliberately manipulating. It's like almost an emotion rather than a physical.
That's true, and I would say they are also more welcoming to the performers, somehow, as you said, more personal, more warm, or more friendly to them. And while the other structures, they are rather kind of imprisoning or almost torturing devices which somehow limit or restrict the movement. You can put your arms through, but it always somehow determines the pose or gesture, which you then cannot change. You just have to be still or basically subordinate to the object.
Yeah. And sorry, Brian, go ahead.
Sorry, this is a kind of artist question. Is that an English door?
No, it's a Czech one.
Good. I kept thinking it can't be. It's got the proportions. The panels are not. It's got to be a Czech door. Yeah, good. Okay.
I mean, I wouldn't be able to.
I'm so pleased you said that. Because it is another step into. It's a door that's never going to open, but it's in the middle of it's a metaphoric door on a metaphoric island that is for the performers to open, but also for us to open. And I think that's really powerful.
Can you both maybe talk about some of the other influences in your work, so other artists or other filmmakers or playwrights that enter into your world and your conversation about your work, and how some of those ideas may be influenced in the work here?
Well, yeah, go on.
No, I was...
okay, well, I mean, I have to say that my work is more influenced by film than it is by art. I mean, the kind of art that I look at and get excited about kind of is around about sort of 1500, that or earlier, or from places I don't know about, rather than contemporary art is what I do, but it's not where I look for influence. But film is something that's been there for a long time and has always been. We were talking yesterday about Svankmajer, for example, and how the huge influence that Svankmajer has made through all kinds of people, generation of animators, but also filmmakers and performance artists. Something about, again, the body and how you use the body. So I think, and I think it comes to narrative, that I'm an artist that likes narrative, even if I don't use narrative. I like it. And a lot of contemporary art is not about narrative. So when I see a piece where narrative is kind of pouring out of it, but I'm allowed to kind of make that narrative, or at least translate what I'm seeing, it becomes an exciting prospect. Yeah. So I think that's what my influences are essentially narrative paintings and books, but not really.
Not art. Eva, how about you?
Yeah, I would probably have to agree. Plus, I mean, definitely very much literature than some things which I am just exploring as an amateur, like psychology or psychotherapy fields, which interest me very much, and they are also somehow close to or they somehow, there is this crossover with my work. But then, of course, I just read them in a very naive way. I just always pick some inspiration points. I probably would have to mention my professor, who was Jiří Kovanda, or one of my two professors who was quite influential. So this would be maybe the art influence. And he's Jiří Kovanda. Yeah, he's who is a performance artist who mainly became known because of his actions and performances in the public space in the 70s, and he has been discovered maybe like 10 years ago by the international audience, and now I think he's quite renowned, and so maybe he would be the one I could relate very much with my work. Also within the Czech scene, there is definitely many other names, but I would now have to limit the number, which maybe wouldn't be fair. But
and you've both sort of been talking about the idea of the body as a kind of primary influence in both of your practices. Do you think that there is that this interest in the body, yours but also other artists at the moment, is because of a particular climate and a particular way of making work that is perhaps in reaction to other things that are very predominant right now, like image and new media technologies, and this almost absence of the body in many aspects of our lives? Brian, we've talked a lot about the idea of going to museums and how this seems to be a sort of maybe threatened by the fact that you can actually just as easily see an object but on a screen. You don't actually have to go and see it. And we're gradually, or perhaps gradually, eroding the requirement for actual one-to-one experience between a person and an object and another person, and how this is affecting
two questions
practice.
There. Firstly, I don't think the body has ever gone away. I mean, I think it's a major image inside the making work. Even if you think about deep field abstract painting, in a way, the physicality of the mark is also a sign of the body. But I think the body image and what it means to promote body image and then to use that for something else is shifting all the time. At Ruskin, we are a very contemporary art school, but we still teach human anatomy using the cadaver. It's not used as a support for life painting. It's used as a kind of philosophical understanding, which is what anatomy was made for in the beginning. It was never made for anything else other than to understand God's greatest creation on earth. That's not what we teach, but we do look at the body in a different way, and we do try to examine our understanding of it and our feelings about it in contemporary terms.
Do you notice a difference in the sort of the outcome of those life classes over the last, I don't know?
They're not life classes.
Well, do you know this inquiry? Do you notice a difference in the type of discussion that happens around that?
I mean, they kind of think the moment we actually ask the students to make a creative response, that's when it will change. Yeah. Rather than the series, the drawings are very important to make studies, to understand, to dissect, to see the complexity that we are. But once you ask people to then make a translation of that and to make something else from it, that's when it gets really exciting, because you've got to do something. You've got to use your imagination as another form of dissection. But I think the big Jenny Savile show that you had here, which was a big confrontation of the body in shock, that the body, the visceral body, made of pain. This is the opposite in a way, because the bodies here are metaphoric bodies. They're performing all of those incidents over there, and those incidents are worldwide and international. But we can recognize each one of them. We can recognize them as soon as someone picks up a stick or an extension of their self, they make a narrative. So I think it's the narrative of the body that's exciting. There's a kind of poetic between a body and an object. And once they start to interact, then you get this other thing occurring, which allows the audience to join in. I think if it's just the body itself, then you don't have so much control. It's confrontation.
Eva, how do you see this?
Well, I would say because I really see I'm not really able to have such a big distance from my work which I'm showing here. So sorry that I'm not still in the position to really fully reflect it. But I would say this is probably the most performative work I've ever done. Till now, and talking about the body, I would say that maybe in the past works I was rather always doing such things which would somehow focus or emphasize the body missing or the body absence in the installation or in the objects. That I would always, for example, present a database of possible props which can be hypothetically activated by a performer, or you would, for example, have a feeling that you would see a stage with another database or repertoire of objects, and then some footsteps on the floor as if the performer would just left, but you would miss him. You wouldn't witness him performing in the gallery. So there was always this moment that there was always this situation when the audience had to somehow get connected to the objects, try to understand how they can be potentially used, how you can put your arms through some structure or sit in certain imprisoning device or something like that. While here there is really quite a big group of people who are actually interact with them. They become really integral part of the installation. They are not just the people who would activate the objects, but they are really like part of the whole mechanism or the whole scheme. And of course the interaction with the audience, which happens from time to time when they face them or there is this eye contact, I think it's also quite important. So I guess I still have to absorb what actually happened here. So this might take maybe some months even, but it's really a kind of new approach for me.
I mean, we're particularly blessed in Oxford for having these incredible museums. And I think most people here would know the difference between walking in there and opening a laptop. The experience is 1,000 times stronger. But it'd be great to take this and take it to the Natural History Museum for it to work for 2 days there, or to move it, just to walk in there and find it as well. So, and it's possible. It's really possible because it would interact with the room. I mean, we've not talked about that too much yet, but it's this and this really works superbly well because it's like a kind of old gymnasium anyway. So to have this structure down here, it's
quite a strangely, well, I find it, maybe you say something completely different having to make a show here, but like I find it to be quite a plastic building to work in. It's had several different functions, and you can kind of feel those functions in the walls. I mean, I look around here and I see various different decisions by different directors to add different parts or cover the floor, and there's this really wonderful language, sort of a museum language in all of these decisions that then builds into whatever then comes along as a temporary exhibition within that space. So this feels particularly almost electric in this space for those reasons, and it does feel like it's kind of bleeding really beautifully into the architecture. It's not something that's kind of...
And the other great quality of this room, which was just brilliantly demonstrated, you can't really see now because it's blocked, is you come in head first.
Yes.
You hardly ever come into a room head first. So you get that view before you understand.
Yeah. It's an entirely different position.
Unusual,
and the relationship with the performers is just
yeah.
totally upside down in many respects. It's very nice.
So I often view things from down there for quite a long time before I come in.
You're welcome to come around and lie around. Does anyone have any questions for Eva or Brian? Does anyone want to?
I assumed that was a cross section of the lamp, so it's just a round shape.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's actually a kind of simplified scheme of an enlarged speech organ.
You mentioned Samuel Beckett in the past, or people have mentioned in relation to Samuel Beckett. I wonder if you've done any sort of theatrical work that actually takes the performance space from the gallery back into where it sort of starts. That convention.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. Sorry for my ears. I unfortunately not. It's actually my big desire. Maybe I'm not speaking about it too much, but maybe I should spread it in the Czech scene more. But yeah, it's actually my big dream to do something on a theatrical stage and also work somehow also with this kind of very classical hierarchical division between the audience and the stage and so on. I did something in Sydney which was using a kind of a database of theatrical props. So we built a stage and we created a kind of improvisational theater situation, but it wasn't really. It was actually an exhibition space which was turned into something resembling theater, but I never actually was invited to do anything in a concrete theater.
Thanks very much. Right, thank you very much.